again.
podcast. Me.
You again.
You know, you can even ask for the headache. I have to keep staring at you.
Oh
You
my
know,
God.
last time we chatted about my guitar, Telecaster. You know, but I wanted to take a minute to talk about the strangeness of your bass and how many tuning machines there are and why. Because obviously people that have been viewing these podcasts have at least bass players would have made note of it.
Or they don't care.
Or maybe they don't. I mean, it's a unique sound and it's a unique instrument and maybe unique to you or to you and a few. So, you know, what is it?
It's an 8-string bass. And the reason it's got 8 strings on it here are the tuning pegs. It's based on what a 12-string guitar is. These strings are all tuned in pairs and they are an octave apart.
Your approach to it, any different than playing a regular 4-string?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, do you play your jazz box the same as you play that?
No, but my technique is still the same. I'm pushing down one string at a time. Do you alter the angle of your fingertips or anything to accommodate two
you know, from having studied upright and from having studied electric, I just do what needs to be done technically to get the sound out. I mean, I don't consciously think of that I have to move my fingers at a certain angle.
Okay, so you don't get more pad to hold it down?
Well, there just happens to be more pad because fortunately these strings you can't really see and you can't really zoom, but they're very close together. So if I'm playing a G on a regular 4-string bass, it's going to sound like that, but with not a whole lot more force, it sounds like that because I can hit both strings at once. And by the same token, if I really want to, if I'm doing something that requires just this string, I'll get in there and pick it separately, either pizzicato, which means played with the fingers, or with a pick.
And chops wise, do you have to warm up differently with either?
I got to warm up no matter what I do.
Okay, but if you grab a 4-string bass now and play, you're adaptable real quick. Just jump on one.
You know what? I'm adaptable because when I notice what the limitations of the instrument are, is how fast I'm able to adapt how I play it. In other words, and this is strictly for the bass players right now, there are several different types of strings. The most popular ones are round wound strings. And what round wound means is that, you know, they're wound in a certain way where you can actually hear the windings.
Right.
Now, this particular bass has a combination of what's called round wound and half round. Actually, they're ground round. I'm a GHS artist, so these are made by the GHS Corporation. Great strings, whether you play guitar, bass, oud, they're great. Try them. But anyway, so the other string, the lower of the octave strings, are what they call, I think it's half round or something. What they've done is they've taken a round wound string and polished it down. So you don't get the same kind of overtony string windings thing. Right. And the other more popular string that I happen to love and completely changes the sound of the bass is a flat wound string, where it's flat wire wound around the core. And what that generally does is it produces a darker sound and also a sound that decays more. So in answer to your question of, do I play it differently? Sure, because especially if I'm playing like jazz, then the note's going to decay differently
on a flat wound.
On a flat wound than it is on a round wound.
A jazz
it's
box.
Also going to sound different when you first play it. If you're playing it regular pizzicato, it's going to sound like that. You know, it's going to sound more like it's you're getting the full thing of the string. But a flat wound, I find that when I play, if I want to substitute for a flat wound sound on a string like either a round wound or a half round, I play with a muted thumb a lot.
Right.
Especially if you're playing jazz.
Right. Just to give it a little bit more of a darker, warmer sound.
Well, more than, in addition to the darker, warmer sound, the point of the note. Pa,
right.
pa,
right.
pa. You know, it gives it like a rhythmic definition similar to an upright.
Well, I mean, that would...
And then you hear the decay associated with it.
Right. That holds true if, you know, when I play jazz boxes with flat wounds. You got a boom, and then it drops right off, as opposed to a round wound that has more sustain. You know, more sustain and more presence.
Well, you know what? One of the reasons that flat wounds became so popular, they became popular in the studios with the first electric bass players because they didn't want to hear
Zing.
They didn't want to hear any overtones. They didn't want to hear any of that. I'm not sure if you can hear all that, through here. But our very, very good and new friend Russell George, who is known as one of the greatest jazz violinists around, 91 years old.
91 years old. Plays
But
his
before that, he was one of the very, very first people to start playing electric bass as being an upright bass player. But he embraced the electric bass as opposed to others. And he ended up playing on some huge records like, pop records. I mean, he was a jazz musician. Played with Dizzy Gillespie, played with Ross Tompkins. I mean, all kinds of people.
He told me a stint with Coltrane and Marion McPartland.
But he's also the bass player on Me and Julio Down by the Schoolyard. He's the bass player on that. And not only that, he's the bass player on Sky Rockets in Flight. Yeah. Afternoon Delight.
Right.
Yep. So, Russell is qualified to be in any Starland vocal tribute band
Without a doubt.
tribute
Without a
band
doubt.
that he wants to be in.
Legendary man.
But seriously, he's on some very interesting records. One of my
he's here with us in St. Augustine as well.
And we're friends. We get to see him and jam with him and stuff.
Yeah, wonderful man.
He's on a Frank Sinatra album called Watertown that my friend Stephanie Mack, great bass player, turned me on to because her dad Joe Mack is a very popular, one of the first people to move from upright to electric drag. Joe Mack recorded with Jim Croce, Simon and Garfunkel, Bob Dylan. I mean,
so they were the
he's on like a
first
Rolling
call
Stone.
bass players back in the day.
Exactly, but if you listen, but he was also a fantastic accompanist. If you listen to what he plays on Jim Croce's "I Got a Name," it's
Great
an
song.
extremely busy, notey part. But you know what? I can't imagine any other bass part on that record.
No,
So, it's off topic again.
All right,
correct?
so no, but now, what and who inspired you to play an 8-string bass?
Why did I want to play an 8-string bass? All right, it's a very, very odd thing that I was thinking. I was visiting my friend Joe Iaquinto in Los Angeles years ago, great bass player. Was in L.A. for many years. I know him because I'm kind of his mentor. I met him when he was still in high school in Sheepshead Bay because I used to work with his teacher, Charlie Deere, in a jobbing band. Anyway, so we walked into the old Guitar Center on Sunset Boulevard, the original one. This is 1982.
Yeah, this is back when it was Sam Ash on this side and
No,
Guitar
Sam
Center
Ash did not exist.
over there.
Guitar Center in L.A. in
Right, there was no-
1982 was the only game in town.
Right.
Ash had not gone
No,
out of
Ash
New
was
York yet.
East Coast.
Correct.
Guitar Center was West Coast.
Correct. And they were a one, what you used to do is if you saw something you wanted, you would send a bid up to the office
Oh, okay.
and tell people what you wanted to pay for it, and they would either accept it or reject it. So I had this, I'm not sure if this is the exact first 8-string I ever got because I have 3 that are exactly the same. One I got from Guitar Center, one I got from IMC Music, which was the distributor at Hondo, and my friend Alan Nuns hooked me up with that. And then I found another one somewhere. I have 3.5 because I have one that I bought as parts to get it. And in its form, I paid $278 for this thing brand new. Although I had a lot of improvements done to it.
Did it have that hookup for the strap, or does that?
No, it did not.
That's your invention.
No, it's not. This was. Have any of you ever heard of Hip Shot Musical Products?
Oh yeah.
Hip Shot makes replacement guitar bridges, bass bridges, gears, and this thing was called the bass brace. What it did is you would hook it up. You would hook it up to the mount of, say, a Fender bass, because this particular bass has the same size neck plate mount as does a Fender bass, a Fender Jazz bass, a Fender Precision bass, a Fender Telecaster bass, and it would extend the strap, to offset the center of gravity of a neck-heavy bass, which this bass certainly was.
I didn't realize that.
So the reason I'm mentioning Hip Shot is that even though he hates to be reminded of it, Dave Borisoff, who started Hip Shot, was the inventor of the bass brace.
And you know something? There are many people that have neck-heavy instruments. I've had some neck-heavy guitars where the body was so wonderfully light and has just stood that.
Well, yeah, I mean, imagine this bass without that. I used to have to double strap it and do all
just to
kinds
keep
of weird
it
things.
in its proper position.
But you asked why I started playing it. So I walked in and I picked this up, and I start playing it, and one of the things that hooked me on it, or two of the things, it was a combination of continuo playing in Baroque music, the sound of the harpsichord, and Todd Rundgren's guitar playing when he was in Nas.
Okay.
How those things relate to each other.
Well, I mean, but was
that's
there, so there was not a bass player that you idolized that did it?
No, it was not a bass player, although, when I first, our friend Stephanie Mack, who I talked
Right.
to before, I put the thing in her hand and she starts playing, like
Walk right in,
eight-string
take-
joke, you know
right.
what I mean? So, but what I found it to do is, I found it, because of the upper string, I could work less and more sound would come out. Now, right around that time, I was so into this sound, and all I cared about was this, that I actually turned down big gigs because I wanted to play 8-string bass, and they didn't
And they wanted you to
necessarily
play
wanted
for
it. I mean, maybe cutting off my nose to spite my face, certainly, depending on retrospect, or maybe not, because, at this point in my life, I kind of only want to do things that I really, really enjoy instead of worrying about being a freelance guy and being 28th call on somebody's jingle date, and I'm glad you appreciate this. And
Yeah, well,
the
and
reason
it-
I brought it along is that when I first brought this to the Roy Buchanan thing I was telling you about in an earlier episode, Roy loved it. Why did Roy love it? Because you could do things to it like, Green Onions, the Booker T thing,
Right.
was a big Roy staple. So to get a wall of sound, all I had to do was go.
Hey, it sounds like. Right.
So what that meant is, because of the presence of that upper frequency, there was not necessarily the need for a piano player, but there was also not the need for a rhythm guitarist.
Rhythm or Hammond organ.
Or a Hammond organ, correct.
Right. Well, I mean, I wanted to bring it up. We chatted a bit about tellies, and that has to draw, some kind of questions when people see all of that, all that hardware on the headstock that may not be able to make out that there are octave strings on it, depending on the camera angle.
Yeah, they don't necessarily know what it is, but I can assure
But
you.
it's been exclusive in our Soul Pylot project that, for the most part, you're playing an 8-string.
Yeah, and you know what? I guess the reason I'm playing an 8-string a lot is because you're giving me the forum to explore
To do whatever you
here.
want. Right.
Because there are no rules. I mean, and I'm not going to name names here, but there's a lot of what I like to call, and you've probably heard the name jazz Nazis.
Yes.
That only believe that jazz music could be played on an upright bass.
Well, that's true.
Or through a jazz. It's just like, well, do you play upright? I really like the look of it. And when people say that, it's like, well, to me, this is more for the music geeks. If there's an electric sampled piano there, I don't want to play upright bass and all. And I played upright a lot. I played upright with a lot of different people, from Jerry Mulligan to Al Cohn to guitarists like your students probably know about, Joe Puma, Chuck Wayne. Right. I worked with them all, and they like upright. But to me, I always wanted to have, I find this to be my voice that I'm still woodshedding and try to fit into a certain situation. And my other hero, as far as wanting to play this, is David Lindley, who played all kinds of really odd instruments, but his sound was very important to those Jackson Browne records.
Mm-hmm. Without a doubt.
Mando cellos, things like that.
I think we're coming close to our wrapping things up, Mike.
We are, unfortunately, and there's so much that we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
For those music techno geeks, as you were calling them, there'll be enough information there that'll keep them intrigued and interested.
And the questions will be coming
folks
in.
that don't play an instrument.
Yeah, like Russ's recipe for Sunday sauce.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you're not from New York, you don't necessarily know what Sunday sauce is.
No,
but
we don't.
We'll be happy
what
to
is
explain
it? What is Sunday sauce? quick
Tell
music.
him. Tell him.
That's a long run.
Okay, we'll
That's
do
a
that
long
in the next,
Italian.
In the next series, next
next time
episode,
we'll
we'll
do
talk
that,
about
you know,
Sunday
and-
sauce.
We'll talk about Sunday sauce and make them brajol and
Exactly.
and all that stuff. you know.
Exactly.
Now you're bringing me back. Bringing me back to 265 Warren Avenue of Fort Lee, New Jersey.
That's why
Anyway,
I asked if it was the Bergen Record or not.
That's right. Well, that wasn't that was an afternoon paper, but
There you go.
Cool. Great. Well, thanks, guys. And next episode will be some very interesting and fun things to chat about.